It is my pleasure to invite on stage the next speaker. Once again, a production that I had the opportunity to know about and learn about even before it was premiered. Ganesh Vasudeva is a California-based dancer, choreographer, and has been working on this project to bring in Life of Pi and Bharatanatyam for a few years now. And there was a discussion we had once in California where he spoke about the script to me. And even at the stage of listening to the script, it was something that was extremely interesting, well thought out, well crafted. And now that this production has been premiered and has been featured in many stages in the US, I'm extremely happy that Ganesh Vasudeva is here with us to talk about Life of Pi. Thank you, Ganesh. Thank you very much.
Namaskaram. My name is Ganesh Vasudeva. Thank you, Navadhisha and Apoorva, for giving me an opportunity to talk about my latest production, Life of Pi, in Bharatanatyam. I'm pretty sure a lot of you have read Life of Pi book. Some of you may have watched the movie also. Some of you may have read the book and watched the movie. However, I would like to start with the story, brief story. This story is about a boy named Pi who grows up in Pondicherry in his father's zoo. When he is 16, his father decides to sell the zoo, sell the animals, and uproot the family to Canada. So they take some of the animals that are sold to North American zoos with them and put them in a cargo ship and go to Toronto in that cargo ship. And in the middle of Pacific, the ship sinks. Pi finds himself in the boat, in a lifeboat, and along with a zebra, an orangutan, a hyena, and hyena goes crazy. It kills zebra, it kills orangutan. As it is about to kill Pi, a tiger jumps out from the bottom of the boat and then kills hyena. From this point onwards, the book is about how Pi spends 227 days in the ocean, in a small boat with the tiger. And they hit the Mexican shore where tiger just runs away to the jungle, and then the officials ask him about the story. He tells them this animal story. They don't believe in it. They say, tell me the story without the animals. So then he tells them another story where it is without the animals. There is Pi. There is a soldier with broken leg. There is Pi's mom, and there's a French cook. French cook goes crazy, kills soldier, and in a fight he kills Pi's mom, and Pi kills French cook. So this is the story of Life of Pi. So in any adaptation of this book, be it movie, be it dance, whatever that is, what is one thing that any adaptation must say, must do? What is the essence of this story? What is the gist of this story, right? For me, that is in the book itself. The book says this is a story that makes you believe in God. There is a character, the author of Life of Pi in the book, and Pi's uncle says to him, go to Toronto, talk to Pi. His story is a story that makes you believe in God. And in an interview, author of the book, Jan Martel, said, this story is about place of faith in the modern world. So this is the essence of the story for me. My adaptation must bring that out, that this is a story that makes you believe in God. To me, it is amazing that what a reader or watcher of the movie, which story out of these two stories, which story they pick, and at what point they say, this is the story I believe in, says a lot about that reader's belief in their surroundings, in their environment. That's amazing to me. So your like my experience of this book, how I see it, could be entirely different from yours, even though we are reading the same book. So that was very important to me, to make audience think and then ask these questions themselves. So why this story? Why did I want to do it, especially in Bharatanatyam, right? One simple thing for me is this is a very challenging story. The movie itself took 10 years to make, and in the meantime, it was said that this cannot be made into a movie, right? So this is a challenging story to tell. So that was interesting to me. That's one simple reason. Second reason is that Life of Pi may be a very simple story or stories. However, underneath, there are so many underlying metaphors, so many underlying things that are happening, so many undercurrents that are happening. And Bharatanatyam is just like that. We may be dancing a Padavarnam, we may be saying as a heroine, "Oh Lord, please come to me," but underneath, there are so many layers, philosophical, spiritual, historical, all these things, right? What better medium to tell a story like Life of Pi than Bharatanatyam, which has those layers? So that was the biggest reason for me. Besides, the only language I understand is Bharatanatyam, right? So if I took it up, it has to be in Bharatanatyam for me. So, like I just talked about many different underlying currents in this story. When I was preparing the script, I read the book multiple times, I watched the movie countless times, I wrote down every event that happened in the book, and kind of thought about what do these mean? What do these mean to the author? Like, I listened to his interviews. What does this mean to me? What do these mean to, like, my friends and different audience in internet? So I had about like 4 or 5 pages of material where I had like between 20 to 25 things. For example, let's take Pi's name. It is not an Indian name, right? No one names their son Piscine or Pi here. However, there is a significance to that name. It's an irrational number, which means that if you're going to put it as a decimal, 3.1415, whatever that is, it is never ending. And similarly, the faith is irrational. You cannot, it is hard to believe in something you cannot see. So there is that connection, right? That irrationality in the name and in what book is trying to say. Second example is the island story. In the book, there is a narration. There is a story about a carnivorous island entirely made up of interconnected moss. And during the day, it nourishes Pi and the tiger, and at night it turns carnivorous and starts eating fish. And this does not exist, right, in real life. But I think underneath there is something profound about this. I think this signifies religion. Religion has bright side and nourishing side and a dark side. Pi and tiger decide to leave the island because they realize if they stay in the island, they will be consumed alive, right? They will die at some point. And I think religion is like that. If you decide to live in an island called religion forever, then at some point it will consume you. So like this, I had like so many meanings for the entire life of Pi or different events in the Pi. Now I had a dilemma. Should I show each of these meanings in my presentation or just leave it, right? The book doesn't talk about any of these undercurrent meanings. The movie doesn't. So I decided not to do that as well, but I knew that my responsibility is to make audience question, what does that mean, right? What do these things mean? And I wanted to make sure that I do that. And then, of course, I had a question of should this be solo or group? This is my first group choreography. I've never choreographed a group piece before Life of Pi. Like most of the dancers here, I am trained as a soloist as well. And I started with this story with solo performance in mind. However, I decided to make it into group because I think this lent itself very well for a group performance. And also I thought it would be easier to get the story across to the audience using a group performance. So we had 5 dancers, myself, and Aishwarya Venkat, and Rupa Suresh, Nitya Narasimhan, and Shreya Iyer, portraying 5 different characters and main characters and myriad of other characters. Now, like I said, I had written down all the events that happened, right? So which one of these things that happened in the book are important for me to show? I believe that it is very important to establish the personality of the character that you're showing first. Because if you did not do that, when a character behaves in a certain way, that may not make sense to the audience. So if you establish the character, if you establish that character's personality, then audience can probably tell at a later point, in this given situation, this character will behave this way, right? We never do this with Rama and Krishna. We don't need to, because we grow up with these stories. We know who Rama is. We know who Krishna is. So I can go and show a Bhagavata, any of the Krishna stories without establishing the character of Krishna, right? Even in Kshetraya Padams, I don't need to establish who Krishna is. It's very well understood, and it very well fits into Kshetraya Padams. If we change these Padams to say Rama, it would feel very weird. In fact, yesterday, Jayachandran mentioned something like this at the dinner table where we were having dinner, and we all laughed at something like this where there were Padams on Rama where heroine says, "Why do you go to that other girl's house? Why don't you come to mine?" It is a very weird concept for us, right? However, in case of Life of Pi, I have to establish that character because no one knows about Pi. No one knows what kind of person he is, right? So I believe that this is important to do, to establish the personality. He grows up in a zoo, so there are many reasons why zoo is there. We'll talk about that in a minute. And growing up in a zoo brings a particular personality out in a person. We'll talk about that in a minute too. So it was very important for me to establish the fact that Pi grows up in a zoo. So that became my first piece. And then Pi goes through bullying because his name is Pisin. And then he overcomes that in a very ingenious, very witty way. And to me, it was very, very important to establish this as well. Because later on, he does something similar when he's alone with the tiger for 227 days in the ocean. So bullying became my second piece. Pi is precocious. He's eccentric. He follows 3 religions. When he's 15, right? Which one of us do that? He is born Hindu. He learns to do namaz, and he forces his parents to baptize him. There is a purpose to this religion in the book because, like we talked about earlier, this is a story that makes you believe in God, right? God, faith, religion, somehow they are all connected, right? So it was very important to talk about that particular aspect as well. So religion became my third piece. Then the book goes on to talk about, Pi's family leaving to Canada. And when they're in the ocean, we talked about that story already. The ship sinks, Pi finds himself on the boat with these 3 different animals. All the drama happens. And it is important to show that as well. This is perhaps, to some extent, the core of the movie. Of the book and of any production, right? So shipwreck became my fourth piece. And end of the shipwreck, Pi and Tiger are alone for the first time in the book. Majority of the book, 2/3 of the book, is about Pi's 227-day journey in the ocean. So journey is definitely a big chunk, right? And that became my fifth piece. When journey is over, when Pi hits Mexican shore, the only thing left to be said is the alternate story. So the alternate story became my sixth piece. Now let's quickly go over each of these pieces because we are, after all, talking about the syntax, right? So I had several goals in my first piece, Zoo. Book and the movie establishes. Oh, before I talk about this, I wanna talk about something else real quick, which is the narration itself. In the book and in the movie, there are two voices. One is the author of the book, and the other is Pi's voice. And both of these serve a purpose. The author's purpose, voice's purpose, is to establish that this is a story that makes you believe in God. And then also in the end, somehow, to talk about the alternate story. Pi's voice purpose is to tell his journey story, right? And I asked myself, do I want to keep those two voices or just have one voice? I decided that it is easier to get the story across without confusing our audience with just one voice, so I only kept Pi's voice. And in the book and in the movie, they establish in the beginning itself that Pi is right now alive and happily living his life in Toronto. So that is one of the goals for me in Zoo, to establish that fact. Also the fact that he grew up in the zoo. Also this is an opportunity to introduce all the animals that come, major animals that come in this story, right? Zebra and hyena and orangutan. If I did some particular mudra later on, if my audience didn't understand what that animal is, it is going to be trouble for me. So this is a great place for me to introduce my animals. And also, there is obviously a connect between these two stories. You can see that the zebra kind of like resembles soldier, orangutan kind of resembles mother, Pi resembles tiger, hyena resembles French cook, right? So I wanted to kind of like allude to this because book doesn't say this directly. I didn't want to say this directly, but kind of like allude to that fact. And I thought this was a very good way to do that as well. Book does basically anthropomorphism, even without talking about it, which is basically assigning human characters to animals. And I thought that this is a great way for me to do that in this piece as well. So these were the goals for me in Zoo piece. And this is a dance recital. So I started with Nritta. I brought Pi and he starts talking about his memories growing up in zoo, introduces different animals, first talks about his mother, introduces different animals that he sees in the zoo. And here I was introducing the mudra, but for me I wanted to go a little bit beyond mudra. So for example, when we do this, you think of an imagery of deer, right? If I do this, you think of imagery of eye. So I wanted to invoke that imagery not just through hastas, but also through other means, right? There can be a lot of other things that we can use. I mean, you can use a face mask, right? But that's easy way out. I didn't do that. I used music. So I had different nades for each of the animals, and I used it later on along with the hastas to invoke that animal when shipwreck happened. So let's quickly see a little bit of zoo right now.
Zoo had 6 zebras. They reminded me of sailors that docked at the Pondicherry port and came into town in their white and black uniforms. As a boy, I loved scaring and making zebras run. They ran together, looking like one long animal.
Taddin, taddin, takka, tarikita dimta, taddinta, takadinta, takka, tarikita dimta, taddin, taddin, takka, tarikita dimta, taddinta, takadinta, takka, tarikita dimta, taddin, taddin, takka, tarikita dimta, taddinta, takadinta, takka, tarikita dimta, taddin, taddin, takka, tarikita dimta, taddinta, takadinta, takka, tarikita dimta, taddin, taddin, takka, tarikita dimta, taddinta, takadinta, takka, tarikita dimta, taddin, takadiku tadiginatom, taddin, takadiku tadiginatom, taddin, takadiku tadiginatom. So it was important for me, like I said, to establish, just allude to the soldiers. So I talked about, zebras reminding Pi about soldiers who docked at Pondicherry port. I also kind of tried to make my dance of the zebras to a soldiers marching in an order, or bring the order. And zebras in the wild have they are pack animals. There is a male and there is a harem, and then there are also foals, or whatever the cubs are called, whatever the small zebras are called. So I kind of took inspiration from it. Nitya, who is leading, is our main zebra character. But I wanted to bring in not just her, but all of us became zebra to show that in the wild they are together, right? And also, there was another point that I was trying to make, is that in this story, each of us, Pi is also zebra, Pi is also hyena, Pi is also tiger, Pi is also orangutan. He has to assume all those to some extent to be able to live for 227 days in a lifeboat. So I was alluding to that also, but I didn't want to say it outright. So now, just this is 1 minute of my 10-minute zoo piece, and I used, like I said, I used this mudra, not just a hand, but also the music later on in Shipwreck in number 4 piece, to invoke zebra when the zebra comes into the boat. Let's quickly see that. Taddin, taddin, takka, tarikida dimta, taddin, takadin, takka, tarikida dimta, taddin, taddin, takka, tarikida dimta, taddin, takadin, takka, tarikida dimta, taddin, taddin, takka, tarikida dimta, taddin, takadin, takka, tarikida dimta, taddin, taddin, takka, tarikida dimta, taddin, takadin, takka, tarikida dimta, taddin, taddin, takka, tarikida dimta, taddin, takadin, takka, tarikida dimta, taddin, taddin, takka, tarikida dimta, taddin, takadin, takka, tarikida dimta.
Sakka sagasa sagasa gamma gamaga gamaga matta madama madama madani sanida maga sakka sagasa sagasa gamma gamaga gamaga matta madama madama madani sanida maga
taddin taddin takka taddin tarikida dimta taddin takadin takka taddin tarikida dimta. Last mishra that you saw was orangutan, which we also used in the first piece while establishing the orangutan and mother. Now, I think it is very important to tie in things from before to later. So that's why I did that. I took like whatever I was showing earlier and then tie it in to later. I do that throughout in this production. I'll talk about it as we go forward. In the second bullying, the goals for me were to establish the personality of Pi, that when you present him with an obstacle, he will always race to it and he will not run away from it. He could have just succumbed to tiger and then offered himself to the tiger, or just died, right? But he didn't. He said, I am going to overcome this. I'm going to train the tiger. So this bullying story is kind of like early on, he's showing that any obstacle put in his way, he will try to overcome it in a witty, in an intelligent way. So obviously, there is a lot of focus these days on bullying also. So there was that social message, an opportunity for me to kind of like show that social message also. How do you show bullying in Bharatanatyam? How do you show, right? At the end of the day, I call this Bharatanatyam recital. How do you show it? So I looked at what bullying does to a person. It has long-term, short-term effects. It kind of like shrinks your inside. You don't want to socialize. You have PTSD. You have depression. You have suicidal thoughts. It has all that. To me, if I visualize that, it is my inner circle slowly shrinking, and I don't want to interact with anyone anymore. So that was the imagery that I had about bullying, and that is the one I showed. So we started with, and in the bullying had two parts. First one is getting bullied, and the second part is by overcoming bullying. And I didn't want to have two ragas in first half and second half, so I went to my music composer for this production, Snigdha Venkatramani, and then said, give me one raga that is capable of doing both hopelessness and hopefulness, which is very hard to do, right? So she picked Pavani for that purpose, and you will see a little bit clip of that. So I started with big light well on the stage, and the bullies, 4 bullies are always on the dark side of that circle. But as they surround to a combination of swaras and solukatis, the light will become smaller and smaller and smaller. In the end, it's just a spotlight. And as the spotlight is also going, is dimming, Pi stands up and then says, my name is Pi. It's a mathematical symbol. And then the moment he speaks up about bullying, the bullies are scared. And that's exactly what happens to bullying in real world, right? The moment someone says, don't bully me, bullies will be like, they will stop bullying. So in the second half, where Pi is overcoming bullying, the opposite of the first half happens. The light well becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, and in the end, the bullies are out of the stage, and it's just Pi's victory lap. And I used the Pi number, 3.1415, throughout over the music as well in the second half, to kind of like bring that power of mathematics out. All right, so now let's see a little bit of the first half of bullying. No, this is towards the end of the first half of bullying. That's the end of first half of bullying, and then at that point, I don't have a clip. I mean, I do have a clip. I didn't include it here, of including 3.14 over again Pavani. We used Alapana first, and then over violin, like Solukattu played over violin to overcome the bullies, and then over that there was numbering said. Maybe I'll show it in the end. And religions, like we established that this is an important piece to tell, right? So what were my goals? One was to establish that he is a precocious boy who's following 3 religions. And second is, of course, this whole book is about religion, so I have to talk about religion, right? And then also, I had an opportunity to kind of like show a comic relief here in the second half of my religions, and I took that opportunity because up until now we have talked about very heavy subjects, bullying, religion, and what comes next is shipwreck, which is also very heavy. So I wanted to give some lighter moment to audience before again I kind of told that entire gory story in shipwreck. So Pai is 15 years old. Obviously, when he's following a religion, he is not thinking philosophical way or spiritual way or anything. He's just following rituals, right? So that's exactly what I wanted to show in religion first half. So for Hinduism, I used Rudra. For Muslim, I used namaz music. And then for Christianity, I showed getting baptized and over Christian hymn. And then we kind of merged all this music together over a jati where I just did nritta. To me, there was a hidden message the couple of them that I wanted to make. One is that all religions are same, and then that also my own religion is dancing, right? So I will show you guys a little bit of first half of religion, that small part towards the end, and then we'll talk about the comic relief. Tell that story through very dramatic music or movement or what they using those. In shipwreck, a lot of things happened where the ship went down, the pie was thrown around by the ocean's waves because it's a storm, and pie sees the a boat, all the animals, and all the hyena killing all these animals, and then tiger jumping out and then killing hyena, right? And earlier you saw a little bit of boat and the zebra and the orangutan coming in to the boat. That is from this shipwreck piece. We will see very quickly, like about a minute of pie basically being thrown around by the ocean, by the waves. This is the first time I used a prop in this production. I used like a 60 feet wide blue cloth that was long, blue cloth that was 6 feet wide. I wanted it to be very dramatic, and that's why I decided to use that particular prop. We'll see very quickly. this is the only place where I used something else other than Bharatanatyam music. I used Chennai from Yakshagana to create that dramatic effect. And right after this, I wanted to show the quietness when the storm dies down, when you know you're safe. Well, at least safe in double quotes, right? How do you show that calmness? So I did not use any music. It was just an English poem that I wrote about how it feels to lose everything. And I just recited it. And because I wanted a contrast of something very loud like that with something very, very quiet, but still very raw in terms of emotion. And when shipwreck was over, it was just Pi and a tiger in the boat. For next 2/3 of the book, it is their story. That's majority of the book. How do you show this? How do you say on first day this happened, second day this happened, third day this happened? If you were in a raft or in a boat on by yourself in the ocean, would you remember what happened on the first day, second day, third day? No, right? So I said I probably would remember the emotions that happened to me. So I talked through different emotions that Pi went through during his 227 days. For example, when he was able to build a raft away from the boat, he was safe from tiger, and then everything hit him of losing the family, all that sorrowness. And when the night dawned, the fear of sharks that were circling him, and the duality of the ocean, and how it made him feel, all the hot sun and the rain, and then no food, and all those things. How did they make him feel? And then I showed these natural elements and tiger and sharks bullying him in a way. I brought Pavani from my second piece to connect that bullying here. And then he overcomes that bullying by deciding to train the tiger, and then catching fish, and then training the tiger with the food and the water. I again used Pavani in that sequence to kind of like tie it to the second piece. And that would be one of my takeaways, that if there is a chance to tie in things, please we should. And the hope that he had when there was a ship coming, and the despair he felt when that ship did not rescue them, and then anger at gods, all his gods, right? Jesus and Hindu gods, Rama, Krishna, all of them, his anger at them, his renunciation of them, and then his sharanagati to them, and then the island story. All these became different events that happened in my 227 days, in my journey. And this was the longest piece. It was 25 minutes. And by the end of it, they hit the Mexican shore, and the tiger just walks out without looking back. Again, there, I started with Vasanti. Snigdha used Vasanti to show the loss of parents, loss of family. Again, we used Vasanti in the end to, when tiger is leaving, to connect that tiger leaving means Pi is losing a little bit of himself. There is something I want to show real quick. This is the end of shipwreck. So this is how shipwreck ends, where tiger is dominant in that corner, Pi is subordinate. In this corner, he's sitting, right? And once he decides to train the tiger, and once he trains the tiger, it's the opposite. Pi standing in that corner, and then with his back to the tiger, meaning, he is the dominant one. He knows tiger can't do anything to him. He has trained it, and tiger is the sitting one. So for me, the most important things were kind of like connecting these things and to say what I really wanted to say. Okay, no, this happened, right? And use the same motives again. At the end of this piece, the only thing left to be said was alternate story. And it's a very gory story. You know, people killing each other. How do you say that? One of the thoughts I had was use the same music as Shipwreck. By the way, I want to talk about this music for Shipwreck. My requirement to Snigdha Venkatramani, my music composer, was give me chaos. And she used Shruti Bedam between Revati and Hindolam, which you saw that earlier where the animals were coming into the boat. I could have used the same music, and here show the alternate story, but I wanted it to be somewhat a quiet affair. So, and I also wanted to include some kind of comic relief, not just have all these gory details. So we started on stage with kind of like someone telling us that, no, tell us a different story, not the animal story. We don't want tiger, we don't want hyena. And we acted as if hyena and tiger and then, all these animals are surprised and then went to a corner. And then Pai narrates this story in English over some Charukesi Alapana, acts through Abhinaya. And we showed these events as like black and white photographs in the background with 4 characters acting it out. So light would come on for 5 seconds, go off, and they showed static poses of whatever Pai was doing at the time. And I decided on it because me personally, I never remember anything that happens to me very harshly. I only remember I don't remember the details. I remember only the feeling of it. So I wanted to show that. So I did not act out everything. So that was the end of the story, and we ended with Tiger and Pai walking towards stage center from opposite ends and standing back to back and saying, we told you 2 stories. Which story do you prefer? And that's where our story ended. Thank you.